This is the Authority Company Podcast, conversations with leaders that are designing our future. Hola, I'm Pardavila, and my guest today is pastor and seasoned C-suite executive, Reverend Kevin T. Taylor, the author of the new book, A Charge to Keep, Immutable Leadership Lessons from the C-suite to the Pulpit. With deep experience in financial leadership, change management, and people development, he helps organizations and congregations find stability and growth. His new book brings timeless lessons that bridge faith and business, showing how leaders can align purpose with impact. Reverend Taylor, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. And I'm so happy that you're here because there's something that's been eating at me for a while now. And it's about the world we're living in and the sort of lack of empathy. I call it sort of like an empathy deficit. And it's funny. I did a TikTok post a while back, Reverend Kevin, about I don't know if you saw the story about the Phillies fan who ripped the ball away from the other family.
Yes.
They called her
Right.
Phillies Karen. And so I decided to do a video about like, enough's enough. She's
Agreed.
wrong. Everyone, the world knows that, but let's give her a break. Let's show some empathy. And I thought it was a pretty kind of like, I'm kind of agnostic, Reverend. I grew up in a Catholic. I went to Catholic school. I'm pretty agnostic now when it comes to religion. But the basis of I think most religions is like give people a chance, forgiveness. And it was funny to see the reactions from this video. I was shocked that people were like angry that I chose empathy. And it was shocking to me. It's not like I did a hot take. It was not like, yeah, she's right. She should have taken the ball. It's like, no, she made a mistake. Let's give her empathy. And at the time, it was all about like people trying to find who she was. And I'm like, well, what's the point of that? Like, you want her to, she should get fired from her job that has nothing to do with baseball because she took a ball away from a kid. So tell me about this. And you see it every day. I mean, you preach this, you work with people on this.
Mhm.
Where did the empathy go?
So it's hard to pinpoint one point in time where the empathy went out of the window, but I agree with you that I think that it's important that we believe in the concept of redemption and that we believe in the concept of forgiveness, and we believe in the ability of people to be able to recognize their wrongs and to be able to make amends for them. But the beauty of forgiveness is that when you say that you forgive someone, what you're actually saying is that I am removing the consequence, the negative consequence that will come as a result. And so I'm no longer going to seek that consequence. And that's not to suggest that, people should go around murdering and that there won't be a consequence of the law. It is, though, to be able to say that because we love one another and recognize that each of us is prone to mistakes and that none of us is perfect, that it is okay to extend grace and mercy to those who have done us wrong. And living with the fear of being doxxed or being, harassed on the job only makes it so that people are so uncomfortable and so afraid of making mistakes that when they do, that they believe that their lives could be lost. And I think that's not where we want to be. And so this is not at all an excuse for her or for her behavior. It is instead an opportunity for us to come together as a nation and recognize that we are more loving and kind than this, and that we can show grace and that we can show empathy to all of those, even those who have wronged us.
Yeah, and it's funny, Reverend. I would look through some of the comments, and not that this is a healthy way of doing it, but I was just like, who are these people that feel this, like this lack of empathy?
Mhm.
And not to say like you can see what a Christian looks like, but they all look like they have a somewhat traditional Christian background. Where they're from. You can assume that they have some sort. Not maybe they're not practicing Catholics or Presbyterians, but there's some level of Christianity in there somewhere. And that to
Mhm.
me, I remember as a kid, that was like rule number one, Jesus, right? That was like of
Right.
all the things Jesus taught, like that was rule number one. So, and it's funny, I've spoken to many either Christian or faith leaders about this, how, when it comes to the Bible, I often joke, it's like grocery store Catholics, like you pick and choose what parts of the
Right.
Bible you go with. And that's one of them that people choose to not pick off the shelf. Like, nah, I'm not going to do that. How do you thread that needle as a faith leader and and having those guiding principles of the Bible? Because because as you know better than I, there are some arcane principles in the Bible. I mean, isn't there? I think
Mhm.
it's a sin like if you wear two different fabrics of different
Mhm.
animals or something like that. There's some offbeat,
I
strange
understand.
things in there. So how do you when you speak to your constituents, some folks, it's like, how do you handle, living a life of faith, but also sort of picking and choosing which rules apply to you?
Yeah, so I hear the heart of your question. Let me clarify that I think that in reading the Bible and understanding the Bible, we have to accept that the Bible is true and was divinely inspired, and that even the things that we perhaps don't fully understand or appreciate are still in the Bible for a reason. I think the broader point that you're making, however, is that we've got to be willing to embrace the challenging parts as well, and not just cherry pick the ones that we want for what suits us in the moment. And the specific example that you're showing or speaking to reminds me of a situation that I was in and that I described in the book, where I was encouraging an organization to work with an incumbent in the energy space, so a clean energy company working with an incumbent in the clean energy space. And because this incumbent has now said that they believe that climate change is real, and they've put their money where their mouth is, and they've made the choice that they are going to work to be able to reduce the effects of climate change, and that as an organization that's committed to making this happen faster, we should do it. And this is the reason I'm bringing this up, is because I used a biblical example of Zacchaeus, who stood before the Lord and said, "Lord, if I have taken anything by any person by false accusations, I will restore them fourfold." And he was a tax collector, and not just any tax collector. He was the chief tax collector in the region. And this is what he said in response to having met Jesus, that he would make restitution for what he has done, and that Jesus loved him, and that he ate at his house with his family, and people talked about him as a result. People talked about Jesus for going to his house, but like he's a person, and he made amends. He lived his life, and so he's now prepared to be able to move forward. And when I use that example, it was met with such resistance, and people angry. I mean, I got letters from school children who said, this is not consistent with your mission, and how dare you choose to work with this organization, and from a country that we have very loose ties with as Americans. And so, like, all of those things being true, I do think that that was the right choice. And so one of the things that I talk about in this book, and to your point about how do I share with my members and friends and loved ones, it is that we've got to be able to stand up on principle, and that sometimes the principle that you stand on is not going to be a popular one, and might actually lead to your unemployment. And in the case of that particular job, it did, because of the stance that I took. But I believe today that it was the right stance to take. And I believe that if we are going to work together in our nation, it's okay to have different opinions, and those opinions don't necessarily mean that I am your enemy. They can instead mean that I am someone who is willing to offer an alternate perspective to be able to help you to be able to see the truth. And I think what has happened is that we have lost that ability to be able to reason together, and instead have become so beholden to our ideas, and think that we are correct, and that our media echo chambers reflect what it is that we are thinking. So therefore, everybody else must be wrong, and that's not the reality. There are multiple interpretations. There are different people of different faiths and different experiences, and we can reason together on some things, and we can disagree on others. But that doesn't mean that we have to be disagreeable toward one another.
Yeah, that's great. And we talk about the book and now your book.
Mhm.
This is a book you probably could have written 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, maybe. Why now? Why was it important for you to write A Change to Keep right here and publish it here in 2025?
Absolutely. So honestly, if I'd written it 20 years ago, I don't know that I would have had the same level of life experience, and certainly not the same examples to be able to move forward. However, because of where I am, and because of who I am, I do believe that 2025 is the right time, and I'm thankful to the entire team at Advantage for helping me bring it to market. Why it's important and why now? I think that We are living in a time where you said where cancel culture is real, where people are not showing empathy, where redemption has no room at the table, where people are feeling as though that they have to either choose to accept the ideology of the persons who are in power and keep their own beliefs to themselves, or they can speak truth to power and risk the possibility of losing themselves in the process. And so, what I have done is taken some of the experiences that I've had in my life, and I have said that it is my pastoral experience that has enabled me to be a strong C-level executive, and it is my C-level executive work that has helped me to be a stronger pastor, and that there are consistencies in the way in which you can govern from a place of love, that you can work with people of differing demographics and still meet the outcomes and the objectives of the organization. That these are, as I subtitled the book, a charge to keep immutable leadership lessons from the C-suite to the pulpit. And in the past 10, 12 years that the book covers, I am able to share in each chapter, I mean, with each lesson, a different example from my corporate career, nonprofit experience, as well as in the role of the church, and not just a church, but in multiple churches in multiple ways. And my hope is that this now empowers leaders, whether you are in the faith community or in the nonprofit space, that it empowers leaders to stand up and to be able to make good decisions, that they can learn from my mistakes, and that they can see that these laws apply regardless of the industry that you're in.
Now, Reverend Kevin, let's double click on the subtitle, the Immutable Leadership Lessons. Tell me about that phrase. Why did you choose that as sort of like the elevator pitch, so to speak, of your book? Break down that Immutable Leadership Lessons.
So at first, this is a leadership book. So this is not your Bible study book. This is not your companion guide to your NIV version. This is instead an opportunity for you to take a look and to be able to see how those principles apply in real life. And so this book is not I want you to turn to every page, read it from cover to cover, and put it away. It is instead more like a playbook, or more like the type of book that you keep on your shelf, and you are in a position where you are uncomfortable and you don't know what to do. Well, all right. Well, how about you can pull the chapter out on swinging for the fences, or you can pull the chapter out on what happens when you are facing opposition in the workplace, and you can learn from the experiences that I've had and the types of principles that I've gained. So the idea of immutable leadership lessons is that this is not an autobiographical tale. This is me sharing lessons that I have learned and leadership that I think that are truly immutable, that are true regardless of the industry. Just like you don't run the same play every time, or that you have trick plays to use in certain circumstances. This is a playbook that would enable you to be able to know, all right, if this is the defense that I see, or this is what I see coming at me, here is the play that I can choose to be able to make sure that I accomplish the end goal. And that's why, again, I'm hopeful that both leaders in the faith community as well as in the business space can benefit from it.
That's great. Now, forgive this turn of phrase, but I do often like to play devil's advocate with leaders that are faith based, or like have
Mhm.
faith is a big part of their sort of like leadership base. And I often say to these leaders, I've read the Bible. I don't remember any point of it where Jesus had to lay off like 5,000 employees or had
Mhm.
to fire somebody. And, I use that as a pithy joke, but like, how do you manage that? The following the footsteps of Jesus, and living living the way of with Christian values, but then also be, again, pardon this phrase, like a cold, ruthless leader. Because sometimes hard decisions need to be made. So I often ask people who've seen me do these podcasts for talking to faith-based leaders. I often ask this question because I'm genuinely curious about this. Like, how do you manage that? How did you manage that?
Mhm. And I've listened. I've been through circumstances where I've needed to be able to lay off people, where I've been a part of organizations where contraction was the right approach. And those times are hard. Being able to look people in the eye and tell them something that is going to be disappointing to them or is going to cause they and their families economic hardship is never easy. I think the Bible does speak to the idea of being able to count the cost. And so Jesus describes in the New Testament, he speaks to the idea that no person would go to war without first understanding the cost that it would take to be able to make it happen. And no person would build a building without first determining the cost that it would do to do so. Otherwise, you would be in the middle of the building project and not be able to complete it. And people then mock you for not having full visibility. I think to the point that you're making, though, the idea of being able to right size an organization is the right decision. I think that the Christian principles show up in both the ways that you communicate that to persons, as well as the ways in which you recognize their humanity after that choice has been made. So it's one thing to be able to say that I'm going to deliver a pink slip to you and today's your last day, get out. It's another thing to be able to say, and I understand that this is difficult, and so we're going to offer you job placement assistance. We're going to help you. Our severance package to you is going to be generous to be able to help you to be able to land on your feet, and we reserve the right to recall you should the economic situations change. I think there is the book Love as a Business Principle that I read that talked about the idea of leading with your values actually makes the organization one that is stronger for everyone. And that is not to say that there won't be lean times. Listen, we're living in a time where we all believe that recession is just around the corner, and that perhaps the market is not as strong as we think. And so organizations are choosing to contract, and we are seeing layoffs. But again, it is about how you choose to accomplish that, but also how employees understand how the marketplace is changing and how they can either reinvent themselves or make themselves more marketable or navigate these uncharted waters in order for them to come out on top. I've been laid off. I know how it feels. It's not a good feeling. And so to the extent that you can make that experience make that landing more softer for the individual, the better. It's never going to be soft because it's hard. You've lost your job. You've lost your health insurance. Perhaps you had a surgery. Perhaps you had a medical procedure that you were looking for. You have a mortgage or another bill to pay. But the ways in which we treat people as we enter and the way we treat them as they exit is important marker of who we are as people, and our Christian values, our faith values can drive those types of decisions.
That's great. Thank you for indulging me. I know sometimes that is a tricky question for some people to answer, and it often falls into it's nothing personal, it's business. And I heard a leader say this once, and I totally agree with it. There's nothing more personal in business, because
Absolutely.
at the end of the day, the way we live our life, the way we raise our families, the way we work with our community, business is very personal. So,
Mhm.
and I'm sure you've seen Christian leaders who maybe be like, yeah, on Sunday, I'll go ask for forgiveness on Sunday, but I'm going to be an
Mhm.
a-hole today, and I'm going to, and I'm going to let people go without all those steps that you said you could take when it comes to being a Christian leader. So I think it's all about recognizing the fact that everything we do is going to touch everything else we do. So to separate the two, there like that, people always laugh about the work-life balance. There really is no such thing, right, Reverend
Mhm.
Kevin? It's like all of that stuff's going to all mix together, and we just got to find a way to live by our virtues, live by our principles, and treat each other right.
And that's absolutely right. And I think that you're also correct in being able to say that that character is who you are behind closed doors, but also in front of others. So you being an a-hole on 6 days of the week and then proclaiming to be perfect on Sunday is just inconsistent. The reality is that for many people, we may be the only Bible they ever read, which means that the way in which we react to things, the way in which we engage with others might be the only thing that points them in the direction of what it means to be a Christian. And so it is incumbent upon us that we take advantage of every opportunity to be able to demonstrate what it means to live. Now, look, somebody's going to cut you off and, like your fingers may move. Someone's going to get on your nerves and you might be, you might want to resort to your the cussing ministry that you thought that you had retired. But the point that I'm making, as I say that in jest, is again that we want to be consistent in our lives. And the point that you also made, I think, is the right one, that that the lines blend, right? Like, you can get, like, gone are the days, I think, where people work 9 to 5 and they're not doing some work in the evenings. You have access to your work life on your device. You have laptops, and so there are ways that those lines blend. I'm simply arguing in the book that let's not try to artificially separate them. What can one teach the other to be able to help move forward? And again, with the title, Leadership Lessons, I'm not just saying, and here are the church things that I've gone through. I'm saying, here's the way this lesson showed up at work, and here's the way this lesson showed up at church. And it's the same lesson. I just needed to apply it for a different context, but the lesson was the right one. And I think that is where I'm hopeful that this book helps. I mean, we close every chapter with bulletin notes and discussion questions, because this is not just your, all right, I want to get through these pages, I want to tell Kevin that I read it. This is, I need to think about this. I need to reflect on what this is. And I'm going to come back to this in the future when I am ever in this situation.
That's great. And I don't want to give too much away of the book, but I would love for you if you could delve into the $6,000 miracle check story. I want people to dig into the other lessons, but would you mind sharing that story with us?
Yeah, so I was at a church that had been foreclosed upon before I joined, and the denomination had to step in to be able to keep the church out of foreclosure. My job was not only to be able to help the congregation to heal, but to be able to work with the bank to be able to move us out of forbearance. And so in so doing, we we put together a plan to make that happen. The bank was not willing to be able to work with us, but they gave us some more time to be able to find a new lender. And lo and behold, I'm at a prayer breakfast where I'm the speaker, and we're talking about the power of prayer, and I'm walking through the different elements of the prayer and using the prayer that Jesus taught his disciples as being the guide. And afterwards, one of the people who I had not met before from the community came and said to me, Pastor, I understand you guys are going through a tough time. How much money do you need? And so I said, well, this is the amount, and we need this money because we need to be able to prepare our financial statements for the past 3 years. And to do so, we need to pay a CPA to be able to do that work for us. And so this is the ask. And she said, well, I recently got a settlement. And so I want to tie that money to this church. And so I was blown away. Like, what? Like, and not blown away that God could do it, but blown away that, like, she was just at an event for which I was the speaker, and she, felt the Spirit leading her to be able to give. And that was $6,000 that we needed. It came at the exact right time that enabled us to be able to do the things that we needed to do. That story continues in as much as we were able to then work with the bank and bring the interest rate down on the mortgage, and the church is now in a solid financial footing. But that story is a story of faith and faithfulness, and that in doing the work, that is when God shows up. One of my favorite passages of scripture is the nativity story as told in Luke, where the shepherds are keeping watch over their flock. And so, but the scripture talks about in Luke 2, it says that while they were keeping watch, that's when the angel of the Lord appeared and proclaimed that Jesus had been born. And so what is encouraging to me about that passage is the idea that we've got to do the work. We've got to put the work in. If you want for God to be able to show up, you got to do the work. And so doing the work means that you got to go and you got to be on the grind every day. You have to do your very best, and God will bless the work and show up in a way that you didn't expect, just like he showed up with the disciples, just like he showed up with miracles, just like he showed up with the angel proclaiming his birth. And so I did not expect $6,000 that day, but I'm thankful that we had it. And listen, I've come to church and I've opened checks from people. Oh, my so and so used to be a member of this church, and I just want you to know here is a gift for us. It's amazing to me. But I'm thankful for the way that God shows up just when we need him to.
That's awesome. That's so great. Thank you for sharing that. And for folks who want to learn more about these stories, they should definitely pick up the book.
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask you because a friend of mine is a doctor, and he works in academia, and he loves dad jokes. So he loves to tell this joke. He goes, how many academics, teachers does it take? Does it take to change a light bulb? And the punchline is nobody said there was going to be change, because teachers and academia, they're very resistant to change, and we're
Yes.
seeing it played out, in real time now in the world of AI. You've led churches, you've led schools. Tell me about that resistance to change in schools, and how you deal with that. Because I had another friend who worked in education for their entire life, and they said there's always been these sort of like mile markers in time, like when the calculator was invented. People said no kid's ever going to learn math. Then when the internet came around, no kid is ever going to do their own research. And now with AI, no kid is ever going to write. And so there's always been a pushback to change, but it always finds a way. Almost like you finding that
Mhm.
$6,000. Tell me about this world of academia, education, and resistance to change.
And so I think that change management and change resistance is not limited to those industries. I think you're right that those industries, perhaps have a harder time with the change. But I think one of the quotes in the book comes from one of my church members who says that change is a process, not an event. And I think that if we can remember that, if we can remember the idea that change is a process that we're going through, then it will help us to understand why it is so difficult for people to be able to embrace the change. And so, one of the points that I make in the book, one of the leadership lessons, is that perhaps that often the resistance to change is not necessarily a sign that you're doing the wrong thing. It is an opportunity for people to grieve what they knew to be true. I mean, so status quo is what people have learned to adjust to. Status quo is what people are doing, and so you introducing something new that is moving them out of their comfort zone is going to be something that they are going to resist. Now, Dr. Dolly Chung, who I quote in the book, did a leadership lesson where she explained that if we took 100% of something, that if you introduce change, that there are going to be 20% of the people who are going to go with you because that's who they are, and there are going to be 20% of the people who are going to kick against you because that's who they are, but there are going to be 60% of the people who can be convinced. And so what we're looking to speak to the 60% that can be convinced. We want to use the 20% who are with us to be the champions of the change, but we want to be able to go to the 20% of the people who are going to be most resistant, and we want to understand more about what it is that they are looking to be able to do and why. And you may not convert all of those people to the side. That perhaps it is a time in the organization's life that that person or those persons have outused, outextended their lives. That's okay. And that's a part of change management as well. But you're speaking to the 60% that can be convinced, because those 20% naysayers can also influence them just as much as you can. I think President Obama talked about when passing the Affordable Care Act that he brought the opposition into the room on multiple occasions, and they would then talk about what would needed to be changed, and then they came back and then they said, okay, well, we need this, then we need this added into the bill, and they came back again and that had been added and we need this. And ultimately he got to the point where he said, are you ever going to vote for this? And they said, really, no, we're not. And so no amount of revision is going to be the thing that is going to enable us to be able to vote yes. We're always going to vote no. And in that situation, well, let's go on and pass the bill, because we know that this is what is right for us. And though I have worked hard to be able to convince you, it doesn't matter what I say, you are still going to be and they say, I think that is something that leaders need to know and understand, in because you can get so bogged down in the distraction of the naysayers that it actually keeps you in a perpetual state of fear that the only right answer is the status quo. But it's not. We have to change. Life changes. We are meeting today, but tomorrow will be a new day if we're alive to see it. So nothing stays the same. The only constant in life is change. You cannot, however, expect that just because you've proclaimed it by edict, that there going to be the buy-in that's going to be necessary for it to be codified in the lives of individuals. And so change management is a really big part of what the book is, and is also like a part of what is needed working with executives, teachers, with academia. Life is going to change.
That's great. 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 And so, I joked earlier about people picking and choosing what they follow in the Bible, but let's pick and choose something from your book that you hope, like, is there one principle that if readers could apply quickly? Obviously, like you said, they could go back and make notes. They could dog ear, go back to things. But if first read, is there one principle you'd like them to either follow, understand after reading A Change to Keep?
Yeah, so in the book, I think one of the lessons, there are two chapters, but I only speak of one. Like one chapter we could go into is it's talking about swinging for the fences, but the principle that I think I would like for people to understand is the importance of being intentionally diverse. And so that's diverse in your ideas, diverse with the number of people at the table, across lines of gender, across lines of race, across lines of demographics, upon lines of religion, that the more diversity there is in the room, the better the ideas are and the ways in which they are shaped. And so I talk about, my upbringing in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and having been in the largest Black church in that community, but being in honors classes where not everybody looked at like me, but then coming to Tuskegee, where Ivy League, Ivy level Black HBCU, Black college, and I was in classes where there were students who didn't trust their white teachers because why would a white teacher teach at this Black school? I say that to be able to say that the idea of being intentionally diverse really matters. And if we go back to the earlier part of your conversation about empathy and the echo chamber that creates the idea that what I think is right, and I only are going to listen to people who are going to believe that I'm right. Groupthink is a thing. And groupthink is something that can be very dangerous. It can be dangerous for a product manufacturer, but it could also be dangerous for a church or for a organization that is scaling. It's important that there are diverse voices at the table who are going to be able to say, no, it's time for us to pull up, or no, I think we should go in that direction instead. And in order for us to be able to do that, we've got to be open to the idea that not every opinion is going to be the same. One of my favorite books is Jim Collins'
Good to Great.
Good to Great. And so he talks about the example of Kimberly-Clark. And Kimberly-Clark used to be a company where they had all of the they were taking the trees and manufacturing the paper themselves. And the leader came in and said, nope, we're going to sell off all of the tree farms, and we're going to focus instead on packaged goods. Now, as we think today about how the word Kleenex itself is ubiquitous with a tissue, we know that was the right decision. But I've got to imagine that there were some people at the table who said, now wait a minute, now we've been in this market for too long, and you're going to tell us that you're going to sell this thing off? But look at what happened as a result. Same with Netflix. They chose to look at their situation and say, no, we're not doing so well in the market with returning DVDs. But man, if we start streaming, and like they got ahead of the streaming market, they beat Disney and everybody else to the table, and they are by far the leader. I think the idea, though, is if you don't have diverse voices at the table, you will double down on what you thought to be true instead of being open to what the possibilities are. So in academia, when you talk about AI, yeah, Google was supposed to be the end of public education. But look at us now, where Google, the word itself, is synonymous with research, and AI will be too. We still have to teach people how to be able to communicate with one another, because AI is not going to be able to do that for us. And you can go to ChatGPT and make up anything, but what you give it will only help to be polished if you know what you give it. You can create something from scratch, but it's not going to be nearly as good as if it's not refined. And so we've got to still empower people to put something in order to get something better back. And that is still going to be the work of education. That will still be the work of academia, but it will also be incumbent upon us to have diverse voices, because if all we are hearing is what we believe, then we are missing out on a world that is out there.
Wow, that's great stuff. Great stuff. Reverend, I always wrap up these conversations taking folks behind the dedication of the book. You dedicate the book to your children, but you also dedicate it to Emily. Thank you for walking beside me on this journey. Whether from the highest mountain or the lowest valley, the view is always better with you. Tell us more about Emily.
Yeah. So Emily is my wife. We celebrate 6 years in November. And so we're thankful for that and for the time that we were together. So I'm thinking already about what my next book will be, and I think that it's going to focus on the cost of the anointing, the idea that being in ministry or being in leadership is difficult. And in one of the ways in which I'm thinking about writing that book is as in letters to my children, letters to my wife, letters to my parents, siblings, and employers, and even to my younger self. But to be able to say that that at the onset of this, that I'm not sure that she even appreciated how challenging it would be to be married to a preacher, and one who, and as a prophet, sometimes leaders don't like to hear what prophets have to say. It doesn't make the prophet wrong. It simply means that the message was unwelcome. And so the reason why I talk about the valley and the mountains is not just because she literally had me climb Mount Vesuvius on our vacation in Italy, but also because there have been times that we've been through the valley. Like, again, I've been let go from jobs, and that has created a financial strain on our family. I travel 2 hours each way to church every Sunday, and so that's been hard on our family. And so I acknowledge in the page that there have been some great mountaintop experiences, but I appreciate her also in the valley. And of course, you can't appreciate the mountain if you've never been in the valley, and it's hard to understand the mountain if you've never had the valley. And so that said, that is why she is listed so prominently in the book.
Awesome. His name is Reverend Kevin T. Taylor. The book, A Charge to Keep, Immutable Leadership Lessons from the C-Suite to the Pulpit. Reverend Taylor, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Have a great day.
And that's going to do it for this episode. If you want to find out more information about Reverend Taylor and her other amazing authors, go to theauthoritycompany.com.